Hello and welcome. I'm pharmacist Paul Mavor from Medical Cannabis Research Australia, and the following webinar is for information and educational purposes only. Today's special guest is Dr Reggie Gaudino PhD. Reggie is an internationally recognised leader in the field of cannabis genetics. He was formerly with Steep Hill, where he helped develop the first commercially available cannabis DNA test, and he has over 18 years of intellectual property experience in patent writing, management and prosecution. Welcome to the show, Reggie.
Thanks for having me, Paul. It's good to see you. It's been quite a while.
Been a while, yeah. No, we first met, I believe, at the Cannabis Science Conference in 2016 in Portland, Oregon.
That's right. And then crossed paths many other times, over the years. So
Yeah, been a while. First up, and I don't even know this, I know you've got a very long resume that if I read it all out, it would take the whole webinar, but how did you first get into the medical cannabis space?
Interestingly enough, I was doing patent work, and I was actually in molecular diagnostics. So I was working for a company called Sequenome that was doing. They were the company that actually came up with Maternity 21, which was the first fetal karyotyping assay out there that kind of made amniocentesis uh, obsolete in many places in the United States. Um, and I was basically told that they were shutting down the company. It had been bought by a large laboratory corporation, and and the name is actually LabCorp. Um, and at the time, because of my patent background, my cousin actually came to me and said, "Hey, I have a friend who started the first cannabis, commercial cannabis testing laboratory, and they want to know if they have anything patentable." So I actually went and did a consultation for them. I looked at all of their data. I looked at all of the things that they had done, and unfortunately for them, they had already started selling the one product that they had that was patentable, and so they had lost their patent rights. But then I saw that they had reams and reams of chemical data from thousands and thousands of different cannabis varieties. And my background being in genetics, I was like, you have a trove of data here. This would be a great way to be able to characterize, uh, you know, you know, what people can use cannabis for, because you have such a large database that we could also then, match that to, plant genetics. Do you have anybody on your staff that could do that? And they were like, no. Uh, could we hire you to be both our patent guy and the director of science for the company? And that's basically how I started. So I was getting displaced from one job, and this other opportunity fell into my lap. But what really, I think, crystallized it for me was the industry itself. So about 3 months after I joined Steeple Laboratories, my father had a stroke. Um, and uh, a number of people. So I was in the middle of an equipment demonstration. Shimadzu had just come to our lab to sell it to kind of sell us some chromatography equipment. And in the middle of that meeting, my mom called me and told me about my father's stroke, and I kind of went blank. And I said, we're gonna have to do this another time. I just got some really bad medical news for my family. And they asked me what it was. I said that my father had a stroke, and the guy from Shimadzu said, "I know somebody. I'm going to have him contact you. I think he can help you." About 20 minutes later, I got a call from a complete stranger. His name is Ken Kovash, and he's still a friend to this day.
Met Ken.
And Do you know Ken?
I think I met him, yeah, at the Cannabis
Oh
Science
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Conference.
Oh yeah, you
And
at that
and also, yeah, Shimadzu were there.
yeah,
It's got
right,
Kudzu,
right, right,
yeah.
right.
Small world.
Um, and within 2 days, he at his own expense sent me a box full of both cannabis and hemp extracts. And so I did a bunch of research and I saw that that CBD was actually helpful for treating some stroke conditions. And at that point, um, the industry. I was brand new to the industry, had not done anything of note as of yet. The industry came to the rescue and improved my dad's quality of life.
Wow.
Uh,
What a great story.
he and it's funny because, when I first entered the cannabis industry, I realized after the fact that I entered for the wrong reasons. I thought I was going to be the first guy to do all this great work, and make a ton of money and so on and so forth. That has not necessarily come to pass, but because of the way the industry reached out to me and helped support me, I felt that it was my duty to provide as much information and quality science to the industry to help legitimize it and move it forward as I could. So.
Mm, mm. Yeah, what a great story. So your background is in patents. Given that cannabis has
Actually,
been, sorry,
so my background is actually in molecular biology and
yeah,
molecular genetics, right?
yeah. So you
So,
found your way into the
um,
patent space, which is relevant to cannabis.
yeah.
But given that cannabis has been used for thousands of years, um, ancient Chinese medicine and so forth, and how can we even patent it? What's the angle here for budding
So,
companies that are looking to patent their?
okay, this is a great question. It's a question that I've actually been asked a lot over the years, and the difference is if you go out and you find a plant that occurs naturally and you do nothing to it, you cannot patent it, right? So feral hemp, land races, those things cannot be patented. However, there's a concept called "but for the hand of man," right? So once you start to breed and improve, and you start to develop unique varieties that were not naturally found in nature, that now becomes a patentable entity, right? Because it wasn't naturally found. It required breeding and care and planning, right? To get to an end result. That end result might be a one-to-one CBD variety that has CBD THC variety that is non-myrcene dominant, is limonene, it has limonene and terpinolene or and again, an understanding of the way terpenes and cannabinoids come together and play in the body is important for this, right? So purpose bred or purpose the kind of selected plants that can give you an uplifting experience, right? Or that can give you can act as a anti-nociceptic, right? Or an analgesic, right? A muscle relaxer, right? So if we understand terpenes enough, we can breed cannabis that is not naturally found in nature and that is patentable because we have created them to do specific things.
That makes sense. I think there's going to be a lot of Australians reaching for speed dial to try and contact you very shortly. Um, and another thing you've been involved in is personalised medicine-based cannabis DNA tests. And I know there was a lot of buzz when I was in the States in circa 2016, 2017, but has this eventuated or is it just too expensive?
No, so I think because the cost of DNA sequencing has come down, right? So right now on companies like Ancestry.com and those companies. So if you look, you can, it's no longer $199 for your test, right? I just recently I saw that they had they had a sale 59.99, right? So
Wow.
so so it's not a full genome sequence, it's a targeted, and that's an important distinction, right? So they don't do a whole genome sequence, they do targeted pull down sequencing, right? So they look for specific markers that they have associated with disease conditions, with traits, et cetera, et cetera. And there are companies. One of them is called EndoDNA, right? And so you can take the DNA sequence that you get from a 23andMe or an Ancestry.com, you can send it to them, and for an extra fee, right? So you're going to end up paying again because you either pay them to do your DNA sequence, which is more expensive, or you pay them a smaller fee to take the DNA sequence that you come with and run it through their algorithm. And what they can do is they can look at markers in the human genome that are indicative of certain outcomes, right? And I say it that way because it's not a, a a whole genome sequence that's going to give you every little bit of information, right? So they look for specific things. For instance, drug clearing, your cytochrome P50s in your liver, right? So they will look at that, and there are certain people, and I'll give you an example. Certain people who eat edibles, right, and feel lethargic and hungover for days, okay, afterwards. I happen to be one of them. I can't do edibles specifically for that reason. Well, it turns out after having done this endoDNA review of my DNA sequence, I have a mutation in one of my cytochrome P450s that causes me to clear cannabis slowly when it's eaten, when it's ingested, right? I don't have that problem when I inhale it, only when I eat it, right? Um, and so there are a number of markers that can be associated with uh, clearing, with propensity to have hyperemesis syndrome, right? So they've identified 5 genes that are potentially related to people who have this adverse reaction to chronic cannabis use, right? So they end up with the vomiting and palpitations and other things like that, where they can either take capsaicin or they can take a hot shower and it helps relieve some of those symptoms, right? Well, that's a genetic basis for that. So it's been slow on the uptake. I think part of that is because of its expense, right? But it is something that you can, in fact, start to look into. And based on what you find, whether or not you will be likely to benefit from CBD because of, you are uh, uh, um, the TRPV1 or some of these other receptors where CBD seems to act not in the receptor binding site, but as an agonist or antagonist of that receptor, right? So you can absolutely start to think about what products work well with your genetics. It is not a perfect science yet. There hasn't been enough other supporting research done for it, but it's starting to become a thing. And I think that it will as time goes on. And the stigma behind, and this may be something that's US centric, because I think you guys are ahead of us in some respects with cannabis as medicine. But as the stigma starts to go away more and more, I think we'll see more and more research that brings us closer towards, cannabis as a personalized medicine. So,
And the good news, price has come down. That has come down a lot from
yeah,
199 to
yeah,
59 US. But,
yeah.
that's good. Last question for you today. President Trump is one of the few presidents who's actually not acknowledged the cannabis industry. He's recently down-scheduled cannabis from Schedule 1, which has no medical benefits, to Schedule 3, which enables scientists to do some research. Is that the case? And are you already seeing some excited cannabis scientists get to work?
So no. So I want to correct something there. So he has not rescheduled cannabis. What he did was sign an executive order that that is requesting that the Attorney General's office complete what was started under the Biden administration, right? So it hasn't been rescheduled, and unfortunately, the Attorney General just missed the deadline that was supposed to be met for what the definition of what cannabis um, and the definition of hemp and cannabis and the parameters by which those would be moving forward, right? So that deadline was missed. The rescheduling hearings have been delayed, right? They had been started against um, under the Biden administration. The DEA has not rescheduled those, and so I hate to say this, but I think it's much ado about nothing. Do I believe that at some point, because it will be good for Trump's legacy, that he will find a way to make this happen? Yes, I do. So I think at some point in the not too distant future, it will be rescheduled, right? It has not yet been rescheduled, so there's been no benefit. Further, because they have just redefined hemp, there's this kind of, offsetting benefits, right? So while it will be great and Schedule 3 will make it easier for research scientists to do all sorts of research that needs to happen, right? The fact that hemp has now been captured under Schedule 1 again, at least some hemp. So CBD is still considered legal, right? But all other cannabinoids, right, have been recaptured under Schedule 1. So anybody who's a hemp cultivator or a hemp researcher that is doing research, let's say on CBC or CBGA or any of the other minor cannabinoids, now needs a Schedule 1 license because of the redefinition of hemp. That redefinition of hemp goes into effect November 16th, 2026, right? So in about 7 or 8 months, is that right? No, what month? We're in February.
That's
Yeah.
about
So
right.
in nine
That's right.
months, yeah, in about 9 months, the new definitions will go into effect. And if the rescheduling has not happened by then, we will actually see a backslide in the United States of hemp, which is below 0.3% THC, being difficult to work with unless you are doing anything but industrial hemp, fiber or grain hemp, right? So there are these two sets of rules that are in juxtaposition against each other and actually kind of work against each other, right? So it remains to be seen what will actually happen and which will happen first. This is very alarming for me because my work is hemp based and I work on minor cannabinoids, right? So I'm caught firmly in the middle of this, unfortunately. So.
Mm. Hopefully they get it sorted out. But hey, if you are looking for a safe haven that does promote cannabis research, Australia is very research friendly. We may be behind in some other ways, but you're very welcome to come out here. But a
No,
big thanks
I
for
love Australia.
your very generous time today, Reggie. It's been great talking to you. Thank you for being part of the webinar. And hopefully we will see you sometime down in Australia.
I would love to. I miss it. I lived there part-time from 2000 to 2004. And it I felt that it was one of the best places that I've ever been in my entire life. I
Ooh.
lived in Melbourne, so I was in Melbourne, but but still, I loved it, and I would move there in a second. So if you can find me a job, let me know.
Thank you, Reggie. Really appreciate your time.